Hi, so I wanted to do a little tutorial on this block number 3 because this block is a little bit different construction than your typical block that has half square triangle squares in it, because you have to cut the squares first on the diagonal to get triangles before putting them together. So you have to basically use the traditional method for the triangle squares in this project that I talked about last week. Because you're creating a different side, the other side of this triangle right here, to make a giant square for the basket, but it's going to have all the multiple little triangles. So I wanted to show you the best way to do it. So first of all, you're going to arrange according to the pattern your different color triangles together the way you want it to look. And it's best to have a table like this to lay it out on, so you can get color distribution the way you want it. So I try to basically lay it out, and then I will decide if I need to move some triangles around to get a better color distribution. And let's see, I think we will put, how about we put a pink one here. So these right here are going to end up being your traditional looking half square triangle squares. But because we have to have some colored triangles up here, we couldn't do the line down the back of the full square of this and then put them together, sandwich them together with a color print, and cut them in half and get your triangle squares, because then you wouldn't have had these triangles to make the top part of this base. So now I'm just going to place these triangles here, and I think I got a pretty good color distribution here. To you know, I don't have the colors too close together. So now when we are sewing them together, these, you can follow the instructions that I did in last week's blog post. So I'm going to go ahead and sew these together, and then I'll come back and I will show you how to join these outer triangles and the best way to line them up so that you get a nice fit when you're piecing this piece together. So I'll be back after I've sewed these center ones together. Okay, so now I have stitched together these into the half square triangle squares, and I made sure that they measured 1.5 inches, which is what is required for this pattern. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to stitch together these rows first. We'll leave this to the end, and I will show you how to line up a triangle and a square when you're stitching those together. So we'll start with this little row up here, which is one triangle square and one triangle. So I'm going to take the triangle, and here's your 90-degree angle on that triangle. You're going to make sure you match it up with the 90-degree angle of the square and have their raw edges meeting right there. And you can pin it in place to make sure that nothing shifts while you're stitching. It's always best to pin. I like to pin everything. Sometimes I don't pin really small pieces, but it's best to pin. So let's go ahead and stitch this. And you will see, now that I've stitched it together, and to open it up, the tail of the top of the triangle is out there like that. It extends over the block, and that's fine because we use that as we go along. It's always good to not cut those little tails off until you are finished with the entire piece. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish sewing these, and I will lay them down. What I'm going to do while I'm here is I will go ahead and I will do my little wood pressing stick instead of having to get up to go to the ironing board. So I'm going to match these triangles together here, these two, and I'm going to pin them and stitch them. And so now, just like with this row above, now we have to attach a triangle. So we're going to flip this triangle over, and we're going to line up the 90-degree end of the triangle with the corner of the square, just like that, with the tip overlapping. And we'll get that one stitched together over here. And there you go. You can see this row done. I'm going to press it with my little pressing stick. These things are really great. If you don't want to have to get up to your ironing board, and I don't rub it, I just press, and it gets the seam open enough so that you can tell if everything is fitting together right. And as you can see at the end of the bottom of this, you can see how everything is just perfectly straight between the corner of the triangle and those blocks. So I'm going to finish this row, and I'll come back and show you how I join these together. So now we're back. I've got all of the rows put together, and I've got them pressed neatly. I took them over to the ironing board to get my seams laying nice and flat. You can press your seams to one side or the other, like if you wish. I like to press my seams open. So now I will show you how we join these rows. The best way to do it is to start with the seams of the squares and line those up, and line up the end of the square with the end of the square of the other row. So I flip this shorter one over, and I'm going to first line up my seam, and I like to flip the top one open and look at the seam underneath and look at the seam on the top one and see that they're laying on top of each other. So now I know that they are perfectly matched. So I will put a pin right in there because I don't want that to move. And then I can see right here the edges match up really nicely. So I'll put a pin in there. And then same with this seam. I will look and make sure both seams line up nice. Put a pin. And once again, your triangle on the end here is going to overlap the other one, and that's fine, because generally once you're doing this right here and you're getting that overlap from both these triangles, right here is usually going to be your quarter. It's going to be 1/4 of an inch right here from the top, and it's going to go right in that nice little niche right there, so that you know that you've been piecing things with an accurate seam. So, and it's very important on this block to use accurate 1/4 inch seams. So I'm going to go ahead, get this one started, and do my little back stitch. And as you can see, I make sure I pull my pins before my needle gets to it. I've broken too many needles by running over pins. And some little fun fact, if you run over too many pins, you can knock the timing of your machine off, and then you'll have to bring it in for maintenance, other than your yearly maintenance. So I'm just going to do my nice little pressing stick just to get that to be open as much as I can to get this next one on. So I will do the same with this as I did with the other one. I'm going to line up the seam right there of the two squares. Get that laying right on top of each other. And then you can see the ends match up. So I'll put my pin right there. And then once again, you have the overlapping ends of your triangles there. I'll put a pin there. Get these stitched together. There we go. So now the last thing we got to do is we put this triangle up here, and the important thing is, once again, is you're going to want to match the 90-degree angle on the corner of this triangle with the corner of the square. Put it down like that, and it's laying right on the square. And you're going to pin those 90-degree angles. And you're going to sew this one together, and then we're going to come back and I will sew the whole thing together with the larger triangle here, and I'll show you how to line that all up, and then we should be done with this portion of the block. Okay, now we're back. I have the whole unit stitched together and pressed nicely, and the thing I like to do is to make sure that I used accurate seams by measuring it against the plain triangle, and it looks like I did a really good job with my seams because they match up really well. So now you just have to line up these two and stitch them together to make the whole block. So I like to start by pinning from the pieced side, so that I can make sure all my seams stay laying down once I get them stitched together. Get everything pinned here. And I always like to pin down the seams and get it nice and straight, because then that way I don't, and none of my seams will roll up underneath when I'm stitching it. So now I'll once again use a nice accurate 1/4 inch seam. And we open it up, and once I get it nice and pressed, I'll just use the pressing stick right now just to get that open. And the reason why you don't want to run your stick across the seam like this is because this is a seam on the bias. You really don't want to do it across any seam, but especially on a seam on the bias, because those are a lot less stable than seams that are not on the bias. So as you can see, we have the center portion of our little basket complete. So it really wasn't that hard to do. I hope this little tutorial has helped you with this block number 3. So have fun.